I mean, how does the governor's budget office get their information? And sometimes you find out that it's there already, and as soon as you can break that, then you'll make a breakthrough. But appreciate what you've done. The other thing, just, and I forgot to mention this in the beginning, Sandra, do you want to stand up for a minute? Sandra Faber is here from America's Tax Reform. They're a great resource. Your state-based think tanks are, and you have a list on your table of all the state research organizations. And SPM, which is sponsoring this workshop, has a booth right outside which has more information on if they can help you in terms of that. Because in some states it's a real battle, and sometimes the fiscal note is designed to throw it away, and then you look at a state like Missouri where the governor says this is a core function of government, we're going to do it, and it will happen. Our next speaker is Representative Laura Brode. She's a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives, representing District 25A. She was first elected in 2002 and was re-elected in 2004, 6, and 8. She's currently a member of the House Finance Committee, the Healthcare and Human Services Policy and Oversight Committee, and the Taxes Committee. She also serves on the Finance Subcommittee for Healthcare and Human, that's a big job in your state,
Yes, it is.
and Human Services Finance Division. She served as Assistant Majority Leader in 2006 and as Assistant Minority Leader during the 2007-8 biennium. She's also a small business owner, and boy, do we need more of those in the legislature. Representative Brode.
And I need technology improvements to get this thing going. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here today with you as one of you and not an expert, so I'm not going to tell you probably anything you don't know, but hopefully we can kind of walk through this machination of transparency that is very clear from the example we just got in Colorado. It's interesting to me that the whole how a bill becomes a law is very different. We want transparency. We want to have all these wonderful discussions, but boy, that path really changes when it's a bill that actually shows what we do, exposes what we do, and exposes some of what we shouldn't be doing. So, you know, it's amazing to me, budget transparency, and probably not surprising to you, that it's probably not the first thing you talk about when you sit down at your kitchen table. You know, hey kids, how'd you do today? You have a good day? Did you have budget transparency at school? Hey kids, how'd you do today? You know what, do you know how that money's being spent? I mean, budget transparency is something we think about, but we don't talk about. We don't speak about it as average, everyday people, but what we do speak about is the ridiculous spending that goes on in government, both at the federal level, at the state level, and now we're starting to see in Minnesota some tremendous transparency efforts by the Freedom Foundation on the local level, which is one of those things that tends to ride under the radar in our state, or has in the past, that is starting to be exposed in ways that are amazing. You know, $500,000 for decorative water fountains. You know, I like water and all, but $500,000 for decorative water fountains, those are things that the taxpayers should know about and haven't known about, but for transparency. You know, the argument for transparency is always interesting, or the argument for accountability, because it's somewhat of a chicken or the egg type situation. You know, citizens don't necessarily know how the dollars are being spent, so it's hard to keep and hold their public officials accountable, because they don't feel like they have the information that they need to be experts in that accountability. But at the other side, turn it over, you know, government officials aren't held accountable because we don't provide that information. We don't give people that access that they deserve. The taxpayers deserve to know how their dollars are being spent, and we tend to not give that information. So when the public demands that greater accountability for dollars, that is the time when I think we're going to start seeing a movement toward a more thoughtful approach toward governance and budgeting. And we need to make sure that the citizens are armed with that information so that they can demand that accountability that we should all be giving. When we raise our right hands, we should be making sure that the citizens have all the access to that information. You know, the speakers this morning were fantastic. They were very interesting, but one of the things that the gentleman said in the morning, he said, all BTUs are not created equal. Well, I would argue that all transparency is not created equal. Sometimes you get what we hear a lot about rhinos, but let's think about tinos. Transparency in name only. We see a lot of that here across the United States. We see a lot of transparency efforts, a lot of transparency discussions, which are exciting. They're wonderful. We want to give the citizens the information, but we do anything but that. You know, some of the characteristics of a good, transparent website, and I'm going to speak more broadly as opposed to specifically on a bill, but to me is it searchable? Is it user-friendly? You know, not all of us have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old who can walk us through the process of the computer. So we have to do it ourselves. And that means it's got to be user-friendly. It's got to be point and click. It's got to be very accessible to the folks who are trying to use it, whether they're 12 years old or whether they're 112 years old. We need to make sure that that website is usable. I'll give you an example. Minnesota's website is one of those that is not usable. I went on it, and I actually had to call the head of our Office of Management and Budget and say, I found the instructions for how to walk through this website, and the instructions were great, but they didn't send me anywhere that actually gave me access to the information that would help me, that the instructions were intended to help me with. So the link between how to do it and actually being able to do it is absolutely missing. It's a missing link. And so it makes that site, as wonderful as it sounded on the press release, it makes it not usable, not user-friendly, and therefore it's not doing what it's intended to do. Another thing is, is the data, is it accurate and is it comprehensive? You know, just putting one or two items on a transparency website, and I think this is what you were talking about in terms of aggregation or disaggregation, but, you know, I'll break it down a little bit more simply. Our contracts on there, I think that is an important component to have on there. In Minnesota, we do have that. Our grants available to be searched on the website, and at what level? Are the arts grants available? Are the water and soil grants available? What level are those grants available? In Minnesota, our grants are available on a website, but they're not available on the transparency website. They're available on another website that nobody knows about in the Office of Grants and some other. You got to know in Minnesota we have an office for everything. We have an office to do, probably an office to create offices, to tell you the truth. We love our government. But that grants transparency is nowhere near and not connected to the Transparency and Accountability Project that was so promoted by the governor. Salaries. Our salaries on that website. You can get salaries on there. That's one of the things that that folks like to say, oh, we can't put that information on there for privacy concerns. There's ways to get it done. Minnesota does not have that on our website. This is the simple one. Line items. Line item expenditures. Budget overhead, department overhead is one of the amazing things that should be pretty simple. It should be expected. We should know what our departments are spending. We should know the disparities, and we should know those things. In Minnesota, we do not have that on our website. One of the other things about a well-done transparency website is it updated? Is it maintained? How many of us have been through reports and task forces and blue ribbon commissions and all those things that create these wonderful documents? And what do those documents typically do? They sit on a shelf and they collect dust. And we can't have dust collecting in our transparency websites. They've got to be updated and continually moved and processed so that the information is in as real time as possible. Otherwise, it's not a usable site. In Minnesota's case, actually, one of the good things is that our website is linked in a way that it is actually updated nightly, which is a good process. One of the things that we were asked to talk about is what are the barriers to transparency, and I think you heard very clearly what some of the political barriers and machinations are related to this legislation. I'll do it. I'll come at it from a little bit different direction and maybe address it from four things. Lack of commitment. You know, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to tell when you look on various transparent websites or seemingly transparent websites or promoted transparent websites, which ones are real and which ones are not. You know, real accountability requires more than just laws and new regulations. It requires leaders who are willing and expected to raise the public expectations for what we do in state government. And I think that's what we need more of. And I'm so excited that ALEC and other organizations out there are pushing the ideas of transparency, because it's not just about creating a document for folks. It's not just about putting stuff online. It's actually about engaging the public in a way that holds us accountable. That's a good thing.